Thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Paris Schutz. Here's what we're looking at. Candidates begin filing to be on the ballot for March's primary. Heather Sharon walks us through what offices are up for grabs. It's the most wonderful time of the year for retailers. We find out how they did on Black Friday and Cyber Monday and whether those days even matter anymore. And local gardeners could soon experiment with new plants. We look at why. Now to some of today's top stories. 11 more Israeli hostages are released as part of a ceasefire deal between Israel and the Gazan militant group Hamas. Hamas released 11 Israeli women and children today. Israel is expected to release 33 Palestinian prisoners. This is the fourth hostage release as Israel and Gaza have agreed to extend the ceasefire 2 more days. Hamas is reported to be holding as many as 175 more. Multiple reports say more than 13,000 Palestinians and 1,200 Israelis have been killed so far since the war began on October 7th. Deja vu all over again at the federal corruption trial of former Alderman Ed Burke. Another defense attorney comes down with COVID, and that shortened today's proceedings. The judge did allow one witness to finish her testimony. That's Pam Smith, an official with the company that owned the Burger King that Burke allegedly tried to extort. Tomorrow, prosecutors are set to outline the alleged scheme to shake down developers that redid the massive Old Main post office. Burke is charged alongside former top aide Peter Andrews and businessman Charles Quay. The state of Illinois is pledging to spend $65 million to fund temporary migrant shelters in Brighton Park and Little Village as construction equipment was delivered today to that Brighton Park site on 38th and California. A mayoral spokesman says work will begin this week on both shelters, with migrants possibly moving in next week. Local 12th Ward Alderwoman Julia Ramirez has expressed worry about possible environmental contamination on the Brighton Park side. The mayor's office says it'll release a study on that in the coming days. The other location is an abandoned CVS in Little Village. More on that on our website. The Chicago Park District is the beneficiary of a new federal grant. Specifically, the money will go to expand programs at the West Side's Columbus Park Fieldhouse. Part of that investment will go to providing free Wi-Fi access throughout the park.
When Parks is stepping in to establish Wi-Fi in the park, it's not just about bringing technology and connectivity and inclusivity to that park, but it's actually bringing connectivity to the entire community, because we're also extending Wi-Fi into that local area.
Up next, candidates for the upcoming primary begin filing to be on the ballot. Heather Sharon with that story right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Off to the races. Election 2024 officially gets underway today as dozens of candidates hoping to win county or state office crowded into the Pedway down in the Loop in the hopes of being first on the ballot. WTTW News reporter Heather Sharon joins us now with a look at who is set to run in the March 19th primary election and why the most important race won't feature any candidates. Heather, it's the most something time of the year. I think we all have lots of memories of being down in that Pedway and folks coming in with their stacks of petitions. So take us through what offices are up for grabs right now.
Well, the Cook County races are really going to be at the top of the ballot for most Chicago area voters. We are going to elect a new state's attorney, a new circuit court clerk, and bunches of seats are up for grabs in the Illinois House and Senate, along with a spot on the Illinois Supreme Court, along with all of the congressional seats for the Illinois delegation.
And let's not forget the presidential election, 2024, Correct. A very big year. So what's at stake in the race to succeed current Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx?
Well, the Democratic primary is likely to pit Clayton Harris, a University of Chicago lecturer and an attorney, against Eileen O'Neill Burke, who was a former appellate court justice. Now, Harris has the endorsement of the Cook County Democratic Party, and he says that he thinks this race is really going to turn on the implementation of the Criminal Justice Reform Act known as the Safety Act. And it may just be filing today, but he's got his sound bites down. He says that he's convinced that the Safety Act has made Cook County safer.
Very important soundbite. You know, Heather, every time we cover this, there's this whole race to be on the top of the ballot. People get there like at the crack of dawn because they want to be first. Was that happening today?
So Harris was in line bright and early, but O'Neill Burke wasn't. Her campaign told me that she plans to file on Monday. She says the campaign's in good shape and she doesn't need to fight for a ballot position.
And I don't think we've seen any scientific studies that say whether you have the top position really helps you or not. So you're also writing that there's a race for the Northwest Side Illinois House seat that'll be a bellwether in this sort of battle between progressive organizations over there and more conservative candidates. I assume we're talking about like the 45th Ward, Jefferson Park area.
So this is the 20th State Senate District, where Natalie Toro was appointed to fulfill the remaining term of Cristina Pacion-Zayas, who's now Mayor Johnson's top aide. And instead, she will face Graciela Guzman, who has the progressive political movement that helped elect Brandon Johnson behind her. Now, the results of this race will really make it clear whether the prevailing political force on the Northwest Side is progressive or more conservative politicians like Circuit Court Clerk Iris Martinez, who is in a Donnybrook of a race to keep her day job and her position as the 33rd Ward committee person.
I was mistaken. That 45th Ward is a different battle all on its own, but this is that Humboldt Park area and that battle over there. Remind us what a committee person does, because it's been a very vaunted political post in Chicago for so many years, but most Chicagoans probably don't really understand what it does.
Well, it used to have a lot more power than under the old machine days, but now their prime source of power for committee people is to appoint people to vacant positions, just like the one left vacant by Pacion-Zayas. And that is why Iris Martinez finds herself in the crosshairs of Alderman Rosanna Rodriguez Sanchez, a leading member of the Democratic Socialist Caucus on the City Council, who wants to remove her from that position of party power.
There's also seats for Congress on the ballot, as you mentioned. So what are the contests that you're watching?
Well, Jesus Chuy Garcia, he's running again in the 4th District. He will face Alderman Raymond Lopez of the 15th Ward, who has proved to be a thorn in the side of Mayor Brandon Johnson, much like he was a thorn in the side of Mayor Lori Lightfoot, and before that, Rahm Emanuel. He is hoping to bring more conservative leadership to the 4th District. In the 3rd District, Delia Ramirez looks to have a pretty easy path to re-election, with no prominent candidates announcing yet against her.
All right, a lot of these primaries, especially so close to other elections like the council elections, can be low turnout, but there really is a reason for Chicagoans to come out here, even though there's no council seat on the ballot. Tell us why.
Well, for the first time since the 1800s, Chicago voters will get a chance to weigh in on a binding referendum that will set policy for the city of Chicago. And this, of course, is the proposal known as Bring Chicago Home. Voters will decide whether to give the city council power to hike the real estate transfer taxes on the sales of properties of more than $1 million. And if they do, the city council will then have to decide whether to raise nearly $100 million earmarked to help those who are unhoused in Chicago.
All right, hard to believe election season already underway.
It's the greatest time of year.
It is. We'll all be covering it. Heather Sharon, thanks very much.
Thanks, Paris.
And you can read Heather's full story on our website. It's all at WTTW.com/news. Up next, another season underway. That's the retail shopping season, how they fared last weekend and what it means for the economy. I always assume some people are multitasking when they watch this show, and one of the other activities you might be undertaking today, online shopping. American shoppers are expected to spend close to $12.5 billion online today for so-called Cyber Monday. Black Friday spending was also stronger than expected, up 7.5% from last year. That's likely a relief for retailers who were worried inflation might put a damper on holiday spending. And joining us with their insights on how the economy and the holiday shopping season are shaping up are Amanda Lai, retail strategy consultant with McMillan Doolittle Consulting, Edward Stewart, professor emeritus of economics at Northeastern Illinois University, our old friend right next door, and Martin Block, professor emeritus of marketing at Northwestern University and former executive director of the Retail Analytics Council. We're really grateful that all of you are here today. So, Martin, how happy are retailers after this holiday weekend so far?
They should be happy, because I think despite all of the reasons for people to be gloomy, I think more consumers are saying they want to go out and shop over the 5-day Thanksgiving
Why
holiday.
do you think that is? Because everyone sort of in these polls feels pessimism about the economy, about the power of the dollar, and yet numbers are okay.
There's a paradox. When people are sad, they will shop to make themselves feel better. In studies of depression, people who are depressed shop more, consume more media. We did a big study for a retailer looking at their traffic and weather conditions over a long period of time. And when do people shop? When it's cloudy.
So cloudy weekend equals higher retail sales. Ed Stewart, you know, the broader economy, GDP's been up, consumer spending is up. We talk about this sort of paradox. Inflation maybe curbing a little bit.
Yes.
What's your short-term and long-term outlook?
Short term is that inflation is coming down significantly for many things. Groceries, gasoline prices are much lower, not necessarily good for the environment, but good for the consumer. Employment numbers are still strong. So, as Martin says, people may feel bad, but the underlying economy, the real economy, is quite good. And so they have the means, and now that prices are not going up quite as fast, and some prices for like television sets and entertainment equipment are actually falling quite significantly.
Amanda, you cover retail here, so we don't see the headlines of folks camping out in front of stores and busting down the window and tearing everything up to get those electronics and TVs. Is Black Friday what it used to be?
Black Friday has continued to evolve over the years, and especially with the pandemic, it's really taken shape in a new way where you're really blending online and offline. Nobody got trampled, as far as I know, on Black Friday, but more and more consumers are shifting the ways that you're spending. I don't know about you guys, but last week I scarfed down my turkey, put football on, and then scrolled and shopped. It's not to say that brick and mortar is going away. There's still certain things and aspects of the experience and service that can't be duplicated online, but it's really about adapting as a retailer to the ways that customers want to shop when they want to shop.
So Martin, I mean, is there still this sort of notion that this is the kickoff to holiday shopping season, or does it start earlier, like Halloween, with stores putting up all their promotions? Is it just kind of more of a all-year thing?
There's an awfully strong tradition that would be very hard to break. And I think, as Amanda was saying, one of the interesting things is that Black Friday is turned into a 5-day event. And in the data I played with, about a third of people say they won't shop over the 5 days. A third will say 1 day, and another third 2 or more. So, I mean, it's really spread out.
Spread out like today, so-called Cyber Monday. Ed Stewart, is this going to be a good Cyber Monday and a good harbinger of where the economy is?
I think so. And there are other things going on in the post-pandemic economy. People aren't quite as much buying things, but they're buying experiences. So restaurants are full, hotels are full, airplanes are full. So people are shifting. During the pandemic, people bought things or houses. And after the pandemic, people are buying experiences. So you might not see quite as much retail sales at big box stores, but people who have restaurant jobs or own restaurants are going to do quite well.
Amanda, you mentioned the brick and mortars, you know, struggling a little more. You're on your phone instead of going out there. So what do the brick and mortars, the malls have to do to get folks out there?
I'd hit the nail on the head. You know, he mentioned experiences, and we're seeing malls really take shape and take the retail experience to become more experiential. There's certain things that you can't duplicate online. I can't necessarily get the help right away. I can't touch and feel the product. You're getting more pop-up stores. Malls have to get creative with their spaces. You know, some of the department store spaces are empty, so converting that to multiple subdivisions of retail or housing or gyms, for example. Different ways to just get people out and give them a reason to spend more time and more share of their wallet in person.
Martin, how is the local mall doing, and is it really that important in terms of the broader retail economy these days?
I I think from a store point of view, malls in general are probably not booming, but some are. I think what the mall has to do, or the stores in the mall have to do, is they have to think about entertainment as an aspect of shopping and facilitating shopping in groups, making it a social experience.
And Ed Stewart, we were talking about sort of the broader economic numbers a bit ago. So with inflation curbing, do you think the Fed is starting to consider lowering interest rates? You really think
that's the number one question? And this is more hope than forecast. But to my way of thinking as a macroeconomist, the inflation we've had wasn't caused by easy money and budget deficits. The inflation was caused by chip shortages and the pandemic. And so raising interest rates wasn't the cure, but it's going to slow things down, like housing, like big ticket items. And I hope the Fed, there's starting to be a change of thinking in economists that the Fed should bring down interest rates sooner rather than later.
I did a story recently. I talked to Austin Goolsbee, the Chicago Fed representative, who's on the committee, the Open Market Committee that decides the rates, and he's saying, like, we still don't know if we've landed this plane yet. So it doesn't seem to me that they're that eager to go do this yet.
I think that's I won't use the bad terminology, I just use the CYA. It's political. They're trying to protect their reputation and not get called out if there's another bout of inflation. But I'm hoping that there's going to be more pressure, political pressure and economic theory pressure to bring interest rates down. And I think that'll be really good for the economy in the long run.
All right, Amanda, what other sort of pressures do you see on retailers that might be, keeping sales down from where they want them to be?
Sure. At McMillan Doolittle, we are retail strategists, and we think and answer these questions and work with retailers all the time as they deal with the challenges and headwinds that we've seen over the past several years. As Ed mentioned, there's inflationary costs. We're seeing them subside a bit, but that's something that's been compounded over time. Labor is more expensive than ever. When you look at the consumer, they don't necessarily have the same amount of savings as they did a couple years ago. All the student debt loans are really kicking back in. So a number of just different pressures that both retailers and as well as consumers and viewers are experiencing. And so it's just a new environment, and of course they're weathering the storm just like every other company out there.
And Martin, what about in the city of Chicago, things like labor shortages or new laws in the city of Chicago that are upping minimum wage, sick time, things like that?
Well, I certainly think that's going to put additional pressure on, but a secret thing is privacy laws, which don't get talked about all that much. But retailers are now repositories of large databases that they will need to increasingly be able to mine and use. And how those can be mined and used and shared are a big issue. It'll be interesting.
So is this being sort of legislated right now, at
Yes.
the highest level in Washington?
Yes.
Just how these databases can be used, privacy
Yes.
laws?
Yes.
Something consumers might be very interested in to know what's
Yes.
going to happen with that.
Although it's interesting, those consumers who shop a lot are less concerned about it than those consumers who don't.
Well, it's like you put something into Google and all of a sudden everyone knows what you want to buy or everything about you already because you see those targeted ads right away. So it's like we've been living with this for a while already.
Yes.
Ed Stewart, I know you're from the more Keynesian Stiglitz school of economics. What about your reaction to what's happened in the city of Chicago? Raised wages. And like this new paid sick leave mandate for business in Chicago. A lot of pro-business groups say Chicago's economy is going to suffer because of it.
Yeah. Well, obviously, to be a real economist, you say on this hand and on the other hand. But obviously, raises in minimum wages give people more money to spend. And the profits of businesses in the U.S. economy have been going up considerably for the last several decades. So this is kind of a little rebalancing to take money out of the hands of very, very wealthy people and put it into the hands of working people. And for retailers, you want working people to have money because middle income and poor people spend money, rich people save money. So if you're in retail, you want workers and households to have more income.
So Amanda, as we look forward to the holiday season and the rest of the year, do middle income folks have enough disposable income to go out and spend it?
Well, if you look at the sales numbers from the past few days, it would suggest that, like as Martin had mentioned, in spite of some of the looming uncertainty, people are using that as an opportunity to spend on gifts, to create memorable moments for their family, even amid uncertainty.
All right, well, positive holiday season so far. Hope you all had a happy Thanksgiving and happy Cyber Monday, and we're glad that you joined it with us. My thanks to Amanda Lai, Ed Stewart, and Martin Block. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
And up next, why local gardeners might be able to grow new plants next spring. But first, we take a look at the weather. Gardeners may start to see some unfamiliar plants turn up at nurseries and garden centers next spring. According to a newly updated plant hardiness map, significant parts of the country, including Chicago, are now in warmer zones. The U.S. Department of Agriculture and Oregon State University PRISM Climate Group recently released this map. And WTTW News reporter Patty Wetley joins us now with more. Patty, you got to start by explaining to me, what is a hardiness zone?
Right, great question if you're not a gardener.
Which I definitely am not.
Are these sort of parallel zones in the country every 10 degrees. Basically, it's like what plants can survive at what is the lowest temperature average in that zone. So can plants survive? They need to be able to survive like -10 to -20 degrees in this zone, -10 to 0 degrees in this zone. So it's how hardy do plants need to be to survive over the winter, given whatever the low temperatures are in that zone?
So there might be some new plants that can survive in Chicago then. What does this mean for plants here?
So overall, the country, about half the country got moved into a warmer zone, about 2.5 average degrees warmer across the country. In the plains and the Midwest were experiencing some of the most change. We can now be on par in the Chicago area with some parts of Kentucky, or think about St. Louis. So plants that we might have had to survive to -20 below zero, now there's a new sliver along the lakefront. It could be -5 to 0 degrees. So plants don't need to be as hardy in some areas now.
How can growers and gardeners adjust for this new information?
You know, think about what are you seeing in people's gardens in southern Illinois or northern Kentucky. You can kind of start to push the envelope, experts told us. We're in like zone 6A, 6B. Think about zone 7. That's what they do at the Chicago Botanic Garden. You know, what can we grow here that we previously thought, was a warmer climate plant? So you might want to think about pushing the envelope, but keep in mind that just because those are the average temperatures, that doesn't mean we can't still have a polar vortex and it can, knock anything out that it wants to. Gardeners know, like no growing season is the same as the other one.
As we're being reminded tonight, where it could be in the single digits.
Yes.
So much for moving into this new zone.
Exactly.
So what are the negative consequences here?
Some negatives have to do with native plants, and that there are invasive species that we've kind of counted on cold, super deep freezes killing off their seeds, or that they couldn't stand the climate here. Now, if it's getting warmer, they might have better luck and become even more invasive. Or people who want to think about native plants being solely what's been historically grown in this region, we might start seeing plants creeping up a little bit. And so then, are they native? Are they aggressive? We don't know how those plants are going to start to behave. So, it's climate change. It's affecting everything.
And it's very unpredictable.
Gardeners, too.
All right, Patty Wetley, I will note that the next time I don't go plant my non-existent garden. Thanks very much. All right. And you can read Patty's full story on our website. It's all at WTTW.com/news. And we're back to wrap things up right after this.
Coverage of science and technology on Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Joel M. Friedman, president of the Alvin H. Baum Family Fund.
That's our show for this Monday night. Don't forget to stay connected with us by signing up for our daily briefing and get Chicago Tonight on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news. You can also get the show via podcast in the PBS video app and join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. And what we're working on for that show, candidates for county, state, and congressional races begin filing petitions to appear on the ballot in March primary. As we talked about tonight, our Spotlight Politics team will have the latest on those races and much more. Now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Paris Schutz. Thanks for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and stay warm out there.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that is proud to give back to its community in Chicago and beyond.